Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. In the next half hour then, we will see what's making the headlines with the columnist and broadcaster, Carole Malone, and the editor of the Courier in Dundee, David Clegg. Great to see both of you.
Hi there.
As ever, to the front pages then. Let us start with the Telegraph. It leads with Matt Hancock refuting Dominic Cummings' claim that he lied about his handling of nursing homes in the early days of the pandemic. You told them they were safe. The Daily Mirror features the care home residents who lost their lives due to the virus. The Metro accuses the Health Secretary of painting over allegations of having lied. Their headline, Matt Gloss. It's also the lead for The Guardian, pressure on Hancock over failure to protect care home residents. The Eye, leading with the possibility that the final loosening of restrictions on June the 21st could be delayed by the emergence of the Indian variant. The Daily Mail responds to that news, declaring, "Don't steal our summer." While the Express declares that the lifting of all restrictions next month hangs in the balance, which is also the main story in The Times. David's paper, The Courier, has word that the Dundee area could be placed back to level 3 of Scotland's COVID restrictions because of a significant increase in cases, particularly of the Indian variant. The Financial Times reports that the Russian government has provoked the anger of airlines by refusing to reroute flight paths to avoid Belarusian airspace in the wake of the arrest of an opposition journalist on a Ryanair flight. To the Star, let's see. Where have you been, it says. It's forecast to be sunny over the bank holiday weekend, which is the lead for the Star, which is just what we need, to be fair, isn't it? The sun rather than the star at that point, I suppose. But anyway, a bit of cheer doesn't hurt anybody. Carole Malone, David Clegg are here. We'll talk about the Indian variant in just a moment. But first of all, it's been a rough old day for the Health Secretary, Carole.
Well, I think it's nothing less than he deserves, frankly. I thought he was shocking today. Actually, I didn't see him in the comments, but I did see the press conference he gave today. And he insulted each and every one of the people who died and their families today by ducking and diving and dodging the main question, which was 5 times he was asked, one of the times was by your Beth Rigby, 5 times he was asked if he promised the PM that all elderly residents would be tested before they left hospital and were put back into care homes. And he would not answer what he was talking about. He was rambling on about he was getting the testing capacity in place and it wasn't in place at that time. And he even said, this is how you get things done in government, by putting policies in place. That was not the question he was asked. And I'm very lucky in that I haven't lost anyone that I love in this crisis. But if I had, or if I was a care home worker or running a care home, I would have been incandescent today to watch this man squirming around and avoiding the question. Say what you like about Dominic Cummings yesterday. He admitted to his failings. He admitted that he made mistakes. Matt Hancock seems incapable of that. He said today that he's never lied. It's simply not true. He has lied. He even lied this week when he was talking about, he said in Bolton that tens of thousands of people were being vaccinated every day. The truth was, I think the figure was 3,000. That's official data. So yes, he does lie. But the lie about the care homes is vitally important, because we think there are between 37 and 40,000 elderly people died in care homes, and every one of the families of those people deserve an explanation, and they didn't get it today.
Well, the accusation, David, has long been that the government has overpromised and under-delivered, and I suppose people look at Matt Hancock and think he is the overpromiser in chief. The question is, did he just overpromise to us, or did he also overpromise to the Cabinet and the Prime Minister?
Yes, I listened carefully to Dominic Cummings' evidence yesterday, and I think there's something very important about what he was saying. It's not just that he lied about whether he had made a declaration that everyone would be tested before they'd be discharged privately. He also said that his commitment to do so many tests so quickly actually caused problems and made it more difficult organisationally for the government to get the whole testing regime done properly. And I think that is a real issue. And it's actually one of those rare occasions where I'm in complete agreement with Carole. I do think that his response to that was not appropriate today, because it was a very serious allegation. And whatever you think of Dominic Cummings, he laid it out in a very calm and I think a compelling way yesterday, what went wrong and how it must be scrutinised so that lessons can be learned from it. And that clearly, with the response we had today, that is not going to happen, because it was very difficult not to scrutinise what happened, but to even pin down with clarity what happened. There was contradictory accounts, and I think that's a real problem that can't really be allowed to continue. And I think the other issue that also brings forth is, why is the Prime Minister backing his health secretary under these circumstances, if there is, as we're led to believe, documentary evidence that he was concerned about this as well, and that Matt Hancock is now giving a version of events that doesn't square with what he said previously?
Well, if your media plan is to sort of ignore what Dominic Cummings said, you can't really get rid of your health secretary, can you? Because that would sort of make that backfire. But Carole, did Jenny Harries give Matt Hancock a get-out-of-jail card today by suggesting that discharge from hospital was actually a very, very tiny proportional cause of cases? She pointed out what made an impact in care homes was regular testing of staff and residents. I suppose the downside of that is that other countries stopped staff moving between care homes, which we did not in this country.
When you take an elderly person who is in a hospital, who has COVID, and you put them into a care home, it's like putting a bomb in there. I mean, Jenny Harries should not be giving him excuses. You know, it's what you just touched on there. You know, Boris can't be seen to sack him now because it looks like Cummings is still calling the shots inside government, and so he can't be seen to be sacked at this moment in time. And you know, and I think Cummings is right. You know, all the media were looking at what he was doing over the past year, and we were calling for him to be sacked. And the rumour was Boris was keeping him on so that when the inquiry came, he had a scapegoat, he could sack him then. But it's gone beyond that now. You know, what David says is true. You know, whatever you think about Cummings, you might think he's an arrogant so-and-so, but his evidence was compelling yesterday. I was convinced that the man was telling the truth. He has no reason not to tell the truth. And people in the government who are banging on about he was trying to get vengeance, there might have been a touch of that, but the bottom line was this government has to be held accountable for what's happened.
Yes, if we look at the Metro...
If I can just come in quickly, Anna, because I think there's an important thing there. As a newspaper editor, we were aware at the time that this was a real problem, that there was something going on in care homes, and trying to get the bottom of what was going on then at the time was really, really difficult. There was a wall of silence thrown down across that in Scotland, as well as in England and in other parts of the United Kingdom. And the fact that we're a year on and we're still in that position is not acceptable, and something really must change about that.
Yes, and Scotland was quite badly hit, was it not? Right at this time with care home deaths. But Matt Hancock...
And I think that's something actually that the Scottish Government have questions to answer on, because if you listen carefully to what Dominic Cummings said yesterday, he said that they were given this promise that everyone would be tested before they were discharged into care homes, but then both the Prime Minister and he got sick, and when they got back they found that this disaster had unfolded. Well, that was not the case in Scotland. It was the Scottish Government, Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, and the Health Secretary here that was dealing with that in Scotland. So we also need to get to the bottom of why it seems to have happened in Scotland as well. OK, very interesting. I mean, there's one thing I would say is that if these older people stayed in hospital, there's a very high chance they would have caught COVID in hospital with the influx of patients. You watched Wuhan, where they were building hospitals for people. There was a sense of panic that you needed the beds. So where would you have put these people? That's the question, isn't it?
Yes, Hancock... What was the Nightingale for? What was the Nightingale bill for? For exactly that. But you know,
well, it wasn't for that, was it? It was for COVID patients. That was for COVID patients, and then it was found this was a multi-organ disease.
But you put them into a care home with uninfected people who then become infected. I mean, it's a kamikaze exercise, and Hancock should have known that. He did know that because that's why he promised the Prime Minister that would happen. He knew how dangerous it was, but he just didn't make it happen. Yeah. And he should be sacked of this. I'm amazed that Boris is still supporting him.
Yeah, and one of the problems with...
I think another point about that is that no one is disputing that these were impossible decisions that people were facing. It was an incredible... unprecedented situation, and there was no easy answers. But what we need to take from that is, here's what happened, here's what went wrong, and here's the lessons that we can learn from the future. If people are not being honest and open about what happened, then we have no chance of getting it better next time.
Well, here's a lesson for you. If we look at the Metro and the other places, Matt Gloss, Obviously, Matt Hancock's defence is that the testing simply wasn't available. But what happened in Germany? Well, in early January, they mobilised a national crisis management effort. And then by the 16th of January, they had developed one of the world's first diagnostic tests. By February, 300 German labs were manufacturing it. What happened to us in January, February and most of March is that it looks like our government, from what Mr Cummings alleges, had its eye off the ball. And that's the bottom line, isn't it? That they didn't mobilise fast enough.
We didn't take this seriously, and this is what Cummings said too, that the Prime Minister was treating it like it was swine flu, that ludicrous thing that he was going to be injected live on television to show people that the virus wasn't dangerous. I mean, that shows how they were just not across this, how catastrophically incompetent they were, how they just didn't take this virus seriously until it was too late. And it's interesting, there was a guy called Professor John Edmonds, who you know, who was on television yesterday. He was backing up Dominic Cummings and saying, had we locked down earlier, tens of thousands of lives would have been saved. You know, this is the science. So Boris says we always follow the science. It's actually not true. He didn't follow the science at the beginning of all of this.
Well, punching hard tonight is... David, apologies, we're running out of time. I just wanted to show the Daily Mirror very quickly, which is punching hard. You told them they were safe, showing some of those who sadly lost their lives in care homes and, you know, families' heartbreak at claims that Hancock lied over care homes. Clearly, we've just had the allegations from Mr Cummings. We know that Matt Hancock is before those select committees on the 10th of June, and he will no doubt give his version once again of his defence then. So we will see what happens, obviously, with what he has to say to the Science and Health Committee, or committees even. Coming up, could the final loosening of restrictions on June the 21st be under threat? Talking about that after this.
Our job is to tell the truth.
This is a forgotten front line. They are dying here.
Here it comes. Cut.
Boy, have we got some interesting ways of showing you what's going on.
Their message to us, get ready.
Nothing like apocalypse.
Instructing you to stay at home.
I can't believe we did that.
It's pretty special, isn't it?
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster that's just landed in between us.
We saw snatch floods going in, grabbing people and putting them into trucks.
You either live and recover, or you die.
Okay, so that's like a war.
That's the war, yes.
We help you understand the world with us. For the past 24 hours, the soldiers have been attacked on a number of occasions. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. They were convinced the United States would become hooked. Well, they were right. We hear shotguns being fired and also tear gas is being put around. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. It's not out of control, but the pig withdrawn. It's so hot.
Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Carole Malone and David Clegg. Welcome back to both of you. David, let's talk about the Indian variant now. I know it's on your front page as well, isn't it? But we're going to start, if you don't mind, with the eye. Variant fears threaten end of lockdown on the 21st of June. I mean, it threatens way more than that in some respects. We've already seen European nations decide to draw up the barricades against Brits again, hasn't it? Haven't they, rather?
Yes, indeed. I think we're at a very dangerous and precarious moment, really, and especially with what we were just discussing before the break, with the mistakes that have been made in the past when we didn't listen to the science properly, when we were too blasé and gung-ho, and we didn't consider properly what was going on and what we needed to do in response to it. I think we're in a real dangerous situation here that we could do that. We could do that again, because it's not completely bleak. There is hope. The Indian variant is clearly spreading rapidly, but we do have the vaccine program, and what we need to take a little bit of time to consider now is to what level the vaccine is having an impact on that particular variant, what it's doing to hospitalizations, and there's some potentially positive news coming out regarding that. So I think while this looks like a very risky situation, it's not completely bleak, and there is still hope that the June 21 date for England coming out of lockdown could go ahead, as the Prime Minister said today. But I think we need to be very careful that we're listening to the science and not making the mistakes that we've made in the last year again.
Yes, our science correspondent Thomas Moore actually spoke a little earlier to us and said actually there are some promising signs amid the gloom, which is that analysis of 5,600 cases, this is Public Health England, apologies, David, I know you're in Scotland, cases of the Indian variant showed that 60% were unvaccinated and just 3% of them were fully vaccinated. Once again, fingers crossed, showing the vaccines work. Clearly, second vaccine, much more than the first vaccine, which is the message, isn't it? Daily Express, though, Carole, Boris, we may need to wait for our freedom. And the Daily Mail, don't steal our summer. Effectively saying, let's full steam ahead on this one.
But to be fair, Boris wouldn't be drawn on that today. He was asked whether he was going to have to row back on the roadmap, but he didn't say. He refused to say that. But it's interesting that you're talking about the good news. A guy called Professor Tim Spector said although the Indian variant is dominant, he said the national figures remain unaffected for hospitals and stuff. Jenny Harris today as well, although they were kind of warning about it, then they were saying on the other hand that, the average deaths today are about 9. Hospitalizations are very steady. They're very, very low. We've been told time and again that the Indian variant responds to the vaccines, that it's no more dangerous. It might be easier spread, but it's actually no more dangerous in terms of life-threatening than all the other variants. So, I think we every reason to be hopeful.